was a sign that Krishna consciousness had found a uniquely receptive audience. When reporters pressed him, asking if his temple would welcome the strange and often unkempt youth of the Haight-Ashbury, Srila Prabhupada's response was a master class in unconditional compassion. "Hippies or anyone," he declared, "I make no distinctions. Everyone is welcome." The new Radha Krishna temple at 518 Frederick Street was situated in the very heart of this cultural revolution, next door to the Diggers Free Store and just a short walk from the house where the Grateful Dead lived. The atmosphere was, as one early disciple described it, festive and carnivalesque. The air was a thick tapestry of scents, incense, marijuana, and patchouli, and the sounds of rock music from the nearby jukebox often bled into the temple's sacred space. It was a world of radical experimentation, of psychedelic exploration, of a generation casting off all conventions in its search for meaning. The temple quickly became a spiritual haven for the troubled, searching, and often desperate young people who had flocked to the Haight. This environment was not without its challenges. The early morning programs, which began promptly at 7, were often attended by only a handful of sleepy devotees. Srila Prabhupada would look out at the empty mats and ask, "They are sleeping? That is not good. Too much sleep." The temple doors were open to all, and often those who wandered in were still reeling from the effects of LSD, their consciousness fractured and their behavior unpredictable. Hayagriva Das, in his memoir, The Hare Krishna Explosion, recalls one morning lecture when a young man with wild eyes suddenly leaped to his feet, beat his chest, and screamed, "I'm God! I am God!" He ran frantically from the temple, his cries echoing down the street. Through it all, Srila Prabhupada remained perfectly composed, his spiritual gravity an anchor in the sea of chaos. He simply continued his lecture, explaining that to understand God, one must first become his servant. This was the genius of his preaching. He did not come to condemn the hippies for their experiments with drugs or their unconventional lifestyles. He understood that their rebellion was born of a deep spiritual dissatisfaction. They were looking for an alternative to the hollow promises of materialism, and in that search, they were far more advanced than the complacent society they had rejected. They sought a higher consciousness, a more profound reality, and Srila Prabhupada offered them the highest reality of all. He met them on their own terms, reframing their quest with a new vocabulary. The handbills that began appearing all over the Haight-Ashbury captured this brilliant spiritual pivot. Stay high forever. No more coming down. Practice Krishna consciousness. He was not asking them to give up their desire to get high. He was showing them how to attain a high that was eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge. The temple also began a daily free lunch program, which made it an integral part of the community, sometimes feeding up to 200 hippies from the streets. Cultural figures like Allen Ginsberg served as crucial bridges, lending their credibility to the Swami's mission. Ginsberg, who had chanted the Maha Mantra in India, validated it for his peers, even recommending the temple's morning program as an important community service for those seeking to stabilize their consciousness after an LSD trip. The relationship was symbiotic. The counterculture provided a vast, eager audience and a platform for the message. And in return, Srila Prabhupada provided the genuine spiritual substance that the movement so desperately craved. It was in this fertile, chaotic, and spiritually charged soil of San Francisco that the Hare Krishna explosion would truly begin.
Mantra rock dance, the ultimate high. If there was a single moment when the Hare Krishna mantra was seared into the consciousness of the 1960s, it was the night of 29th of January 1967. The event was the Mantra Rock Dance, a benefit concert for the new Frederick Street Temple, held at the Avalon Ballroom. one of the hallowed halls of the San Francisco psychedelic rock scene. The lineup was a dream of the counterculture. The Grateful Dead, Janis Joplin, and with Big Brother and the Holding Company, Moby Grape, and Jefferson Airplane. In an extraordinary display of support, all these legendary bands agreed to perform for free or for a nominal fee, with all proceeds going to the temple. The ballroom was a swirling vortex of colour, sound and energy. A capacity crowd of thousands, dressed in the vibrant regalia of the hippie movement. Tribal robes, feathers, beads and bells filled the hall. The air was thick with incense and electricity. Psychedelic light shows pulsed on the walls, and the room throbbed with the power of amplified rock and roll. Among the luminaries present were the High Priest of LSD, Timothy Leary, and even a contingent of the notorious Hells Angels Motorcycle Club, their rugged appearance a stark contrast to the peaceful ethos of the event. Then at 10 o'clock, a hush fell over the roaring crowd. Devotees at the entrance began to blow conch shells, and a drum roll echoed through the hall. As if by a single unspoken command, the sea of people parted, creating a wide aisle from the entrance to the stage. Into this space walked Srila Prabhupada. With his head held high, his saffron robes radiant against the psychedelic backdrop, he seemed to float through the strange milieu. The entire ballroom rose to its feet in a wave of thunderous applause and cheers. On stage, Allen Ginsberg welcomed him, speaking of his own experiences with the Maha Mantra and its power to deliver the mind. After a brief address from Srila Prabhupada explaining the ancient origins of the sacred chant, the spiritual portion of the evening began. As Ginsberg played his harmonium, the slow rhythmic pulse of the mantra began to fill the room. Soon the rock musicians joined in, and the sound swelled. Then Srila Prabhupada stood, raised his arms high above his head, and began to dance. He gestured for everyone to join him, and the entire hall, hippies, poets, musicians, and seekers, rose as one, their arms upraised, swaying and dancing in a collective ecstasy. Enormous pulsing images of Krishna were projected on the walls, perfectly synchronized with the beat. The chant grew more and more intense, a wave of sound that seemed to surge and swell without limit, enveloping everyone in its blissful vibration. The ballroom appeared as if it was a human field of wheat blowing in the wind. It produced a calm feeling in contrast to the usual Avalon ballroom atmosphere of gyrating energies. The chanting of Hare Krishna continued for over an hour, and finally everyone was jumping and yelling and even crying and shouting. Then suddenly it ended, and all that could be heard was the loud hum of the amplifiers and Swamiji's voice ringing out, offering obeisances to his spiritual master. Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parirajakacharya Asotos Sata Shishimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. As Swamiji left the ballroom and the appreciative crowd behind, he commented, "This is no place for a brahmachari." The event was later called the Ultimate High and the major spiritual event of the San Francisco hippie era. For weeks afterwards, the Haight-Ashbury buzzed with talk of the mantra rock dance. Allen Ginsberg would recall, it was the height of the Haight-Ashbury spiritual enthusiasm, the first time there had been a music scene in San Francisco where everybody could be part of it and participate. On that night, in the heart of the counterculture, Srila Prabhupada had proven that the holy name of Krishna was the most powerful sound vibration, capable of uniting thousands of souls in a dance of divine love. excuse me, the Lord of the universe appears in the midst of this whirlwind of public preaching. A quiet miracle was unfolding, a pastime that would forever change the character of the movement in the West. In 1967, Malati Dasi, one of the pioneering devotees of the San Francisco temple, was browsing in a local import store called Cost Plus. In a barrel near the cash register, she found a small, curious wooden figure. It was black, with a wide, euphoric smile and enormous round eyes. It had no discernible arms or legs, but it held a strange, otherworldly charm. Seeing the label "Made in India" on the bottom, she felt compelled to buy it for her spiritual master. When her husband, Shyamasundar, presented the small doll to Srila Prabhupada, the effect was electric. A startled, beaming look came over Srila Prabhupada's face. He immediately rose from his seat, placed the doll on his metal trunk, and fell flat on the floor before it in full obeisance. Beckoning for the others to do the same, he then began to pray in Sanskrit. His voice, filled with emotion, repeated the sacred verse, Jagannath Swami Nayana Patagami Bhava to me. O Lord of the universe, kindly be visible to me. He explained to his astonished disciples that this was no mere doll. This was Lord Krishna in his most merciful form as Jagannath, the Lord of the universe. He knew that where Lord Jagannath appeared, his brother Lord Balaram and his sister Lady Subhadra must also be. He instructed Malati to return to the store at once, and sure enough, she found the other two figures in separate barrels. Seeing the appearance of Lord Jagannath in San Francisco, not as a coincidence, but as a direct intervention of Krishna, Srila Prabhupada's vision for the West expanded. He narrated the ancient history of King Indradyumna, who by the Lord's arrangement received the seemingly unfinished forms of the deities, whose ecstatic features were a result of hearing about Krishna's pastimes. This form, Srila Prabhupada explained, was especially merciful to the most fallen. He declared that San Francisco would now be known as New Jagannath Puri, a reflection of the original holy city in India where Lord Jagannath resides. And he gave a momentous instruction that they must hold a Rath Yatra, a festival of chariots, for the first time in the history of the Western worlds. He asked Shyamasundara, a gifted woodworker, to carve large-scale replicas of the small figures, and he would personally install them and inaugurate the festival. Shyamasundara bought 3 large blocks of hardwood and began carving on his apartment balcony. During the process, a splinter lodged in his hand, leading to an infection that Prabhupada explained was Lord Jagannath taking away the reactions to his past sinful activities. Jagannath Ki Jai. Who do I pass the microphone?
The third heart attack. It was May of 1967. While back in New York, Srila Prabhupada suffered a massive health crisis. One day, Rupanuga, sitting close to Srila Prabhupada's dais during a lecture, noticed his hands shaking as he spoke. Kirtananda had been there when, months ago, the morning after they had made a record, Srila Prabhupada had slept late and complained of his heart stopping and not being able to move. Oh, okay, skipping. Glasses aren't so good. If I ever get sick, he had told Kirtananda, don't ring a doctor. Don't take me to a hospital. Just give me the beads, my beads, and chant Hare Krishna. On the morning of Memorial Day, when he did not come down from his apartment for the regular lecture, his disciples rushed upstairs to find him lying on the floor, seemingly lifeless. He had suffered a severe stroke that left his left side paralyzed. The disciples were thrown into a state of panic. It was a holiday weekend, and finding a doctor was nearly impossible. When one was finally reached, he confirmed the stroke and insisted on hospitalization. At Beth Israel Hospital, the diagnosis was grim. Doctors told the devotees to be prepared, as he might not survive the night. Srila Prabhupada himself diagnosed his condition as his third major heart attack, the first two having occurred on the steamship Jaladuta during his voyage to America. They say that anyone who gets a third heart attack, he later recalled, they must expire. The news sent shockwaves through the small community of devotees. In New York, they kept a constant 24-hour vigil at his bedside, massaging his limbs as he had instructed. In San Francisco, upon receiving a desperate phone call from the East Coast, 30 disciples gathered in the Frederick Street Temple. They stayed up the entire night, chanting before the newly appeared deities of Lord Jagannath, praying with all their hearts for their spiritual master's life. As Janaki Dasi later recalled, in the deepest hours of the night, a palpable change was felt in the atmosphere, a spiritual assurance that their beloved Swamiji would survive. A few hours later, another phone call confirmed it. He had made it through the night. This profound crisis transformed the disciples' relationship with their spiritual master, deepening it from one of student and teacher to that of loving children for their father. After his release from the hospital, the devotees in San Francisco, wanting him to recover in better weather, arranged for his return to the West Coast. Doctors advised him to take regular walks to aid his recovery. But the place they had for him, with its winding roads, was not suitable, and the walks would make him dizzy, a lingering effect of the stroke. This difficulty and the persistent internal pains from the attack would eventually lead to his decision to return to the Holy Land of India to fully recuperate. But first, there was a festival to oversee.
A Chariot of Mercy on the Golden Gate. On 9 July 1967, for the first time outside of India, the ancient and sacred Rath Yatra festival was celebrated on the streets of a western city. The preparations had been a labor of love, spearheaded by the tireless and selfless devotee Jayananda Das, who was instrumental in constructing the chariot. The magnificent chariot was built atop a yellow Hertz rental flatbed truck adorned with a pyramidal cloth canopy and 5-foot columns. In the temple, the women had cooked thousands of chapatis to be distributed as prasadam along the parade route. The procession began at the corner of Haight and Lion Streets, the heart of the hippie district, and made its way through the city to the shores of the Pacific Ocean. Atop the chariot sat the newly carved deities of Lord Jagannath, Lord Balaram, and Lady Subhadra, their joyful faces beaming down upon the city. With them sat Srila Prabhupada, his presence effulgent and his mood ecstatic. He led the thunderous kirtan, playing a gong, his voice amplified for all to hear, as thousands of people, hippies, tourists, and curious locals joined the procession, dancing and chanting in the streets. In a beautiful display of the Lord's transcendental nature, a special pastime occurred. As the truck navigated a steep hill, the engine stalled and the chariot began to roll backward. This happened several times, putting the devotees into a state of transcendental anxiety. When they later related the incident to Srila Prabhupada, he laughed and explained that this was a famous Leela of Lord Jagannath. Even in Puri, the Lord's cart often refuses to move, displaying his own sweet will. Now in San Francisco, Lord Jagannath had brought his pastimes with him, confirming that his mercy was truly flooding the Western world. The festival was a resounding triumph. The local newspaper ran a story with the headline, "As San Francisco paraders hail Hindu god Krishna." More than just a cultural event, it was a profound spiritual experience that planted the seeds of Lord Jagannath's mercy deep into the heart of America. From the single joyful procession, the Rath Yatra festival would spread to every major city on the globe, a rolling chariot of love and mercy for all to see.
Part 2. Crossing the Atlantic, 1968 to 1970. Brahmananda showed Prabhupada a globe with markers representing ISKCON centers. Now, there was one in North Carolina, Brahmananda said. Then it becomes 15? Prabhupada asked. He was smiling and looking directly from one devotee to another. I want each of you to go and start a center. What is the difficulty? Take one mridanga. Then another person will come and join you. He will take kartals. When I came here, Brahmananda and Achyutananda were dancing. And after chanting, hundreds of men will come to your storefront and enjoy chanting and dancing.
Training in Montreal. The Hare Krishna explosion that had rocked San Francisco was now poised to cross the ocean. Srila Prabhupada's vision was global, and his next target was London, cultural and financial capital of Europe and the heart of the former British Empire. It was a mission of profound historical significance. His own spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, had sent sannyasis to London decades earlier, but their efforts had yielded little lasting result. Now Srila Prabhupada would send his young householder disciples, the very pioneers who had helped establish the San Francisco Temple, to succeed where others had failed. In August of 1968, he called upon the same three couples, Mukunda and Janaki, Shyamasundar and Malati, and Gurudas and Yamuna. Before their departure, the 6 devotees traveled from San Francisco to Montreal to receive personal training and blessings from their spiritual master. During an initiation ceremony on 11 August 1968, Srila Prabhupada expressed his deep emotions, stating that his own spiritual master had a great desire to preach in the West and would be pleased to see so many young people seriously engaged in the mission. He told them, "I am very glad that you have come here from San Francisco, for you're going to London." For your going to London mission. When Mukunda asked Srila Prabhupada for any financial specific instructions, what followed was not a philosophical discourse, but a simple, humorous story that contained the key to their success. Prabhupada recounted seeing a Charlie Chaplin film in his youth. In the film, Chaplin is at a formal outdoor ball when mischievous boys put glue on the bench. An unsuspecting couple sits down, and when the man stands up, the back of his formal coattails are ripped away. As Prabhupada told the story, he laughed heartily. The devotees, surprised by this unexpected instruction, laughed along with him. The man in the film, rather than being embarrassed by the stares of the other dancers, deliberately tears his jacket all the way up to the collar and begins to dance with wild abandon. Soon another man, catching the spirit, rips his own coattails and joins in. One by one, all the dancers follow suit, and the entire ballroom is filled with people dancing with joyful ripped coats. Only later did the devotees understand the profound wisdom in this simple tale. Srila Prabhupada was telling them that their preaching in the reserved culture of England might at first seem strange or even ridiculous, but if they preached with bold, pure, and enthusiastic conviction, without fear of being different, eventually everyone would follow their lead.
A mission of faith. This instruction proved to be essential, for their initial days in London were a period of intense struggle. They arrived with very little money and were forced to live in separate, humble lodgings scattered across the vast city. Months passed with no tangible progress. They faced financial hardship, cultural alienation, and a deep sense of isolation. The initial enthusiasm began to wane, replaced by discouragement so profound that they sometimes spoke of giving up and returning to America. Yamuna Dasi recalled her desperate situation, living in a Jamaican ghetto where her only solace was to sit day after day listening to a tape of Srila Prabhupada singing, praying with all her heart, "Please come, please come." Their only connection with their spiritual master, their only source of strength, was the stream of encouraging letters he sent from across the Atlantic. They would read and reread his words, clinging to the faith that their sincere efforts would eventually bear fruit. The Charlie Chaplin's strategy was a testament to Srila Prabhupada's masterful understanding of how spiritual movements take root. He knew that success would not come from trying to conform to the norms of British society, but from establishing a new spiritually potent reality, just as the public chanting in Tompkins Square Park had broken the American silence, and the mantra rock dance had created a new spiritual centre for the countercultural culture, so too in London their success would depend on their unwavering conviction. By acting with a pure, unashamed faith, they would create their own spiritual gravity, drawing people into their orbit rather than trying to fit into an existing one. It was a strategy of spiritual confidence, not social conformity.
An unexpected friendship. The devotee's primary plan, audacious as it seemed, was to make contact with the most famous people in the world, the Beatles. They reasoned that if the Beatles could be convinced to introduce the Hare Krishna mantra into their music, the message would reach millions overnight. After months of fruitless attempts, a moment of grace arrived. In late 1968, Shyama Sundar Das went to the band's Apple Records office on Salva Row, and through a series of fortunate connections, his message reached George Harrison. George, the Beatles' most deeply interested in Indian philosophy, was already receptive. He had travelled to India, had heard the chanting of the holy names, and had even acquired one of Srila Prabhupada's first records. When he finally met Shyama Sundar Das, or Shyama Sundara, his greeting was not one of distant curiosity, but of joyful recognition. "Hare Krishna," he said with a warm smile. "Where have you been? I've been waiting to meet you." That meeting was the beginning of a deep and genuine friendship that would become the cornerstone of the Hare Krishna movement's popularity and success in the United Kingdom, and indeed the world. George was not just a celebrity patron, he became a sincere friend and spiritual seeker. He invited Shyamasundara to his home for long discussions about philosophy and was so impressed that he soon arranged for Shyamasundara to visit Twickenham Studios to speak with John Lennon, Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr. The lonely, struggling pioneers had found their champion, and the door to the world was about to be thrown wide open.
Josh recalled, I feel at home with Krishna. I think that's something that has been there from previous birth. So it was like the door was opening to me at that time, but it was like a jigsaw puzzle. And I need all these little pieces to make a complete picture. And that is what has been happening by the devotees and Swami Bhaktivedanta coming along, or some devotee giving me a book or hearing the first Hare Krishna album. It's all been slowly fitting together. And these are some of the reasons why I respond to Shyamasundar and Guru Dasa when they first came to London. Let's face it, if I'm going to Hara to stand up and be counted, then I will be with these guys rather than with those over there. It's like that. I will be with the devotees rather than with the straight people who are the so-called saints.
The sound that shook the world. When Prabhupada heard about George, he took seriously the possibility that George might fully take up Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada wrote, "It is understood from your letter that Mr. George Harrison has little sympathy for our movement, and if Krishna is actually satisfied on him, surely he'll be able to join with us in pushing on the Sankirtan movement around the world. Somehow or other, the Beatles have become the cynosure of the neighboring European countries in America also. He's attracted by our Sankirtan party, and if Mr. George Harrison takes the leading part in organizing a huge Sankirtan party consisting of the Beatles and our ISKCON boys, surely we shall change the face of the world, so much politically harassed by the maneuvers of the politicians." George Harrison, convinced of the mantra's power, decided to use his considerable influence to share it. He offered to produce a single for the devotees on the Beatles' own Apple record label. In the summer of 1969, the small group of devotees found themselves at the legendary EMI Studios on Abbey Road, a place that was the sanctum sanctorum of modern music. The recording session itself was a beautiful confluence of East and West. George Harrison played the harmonium and guitar, while Paul McCartney and his wife Linda helped operate the massive mixing console in the control room. Praying intensely to Srila Prabhupada for the spiritual strength to represent him properly, Yamuna Dasi sang the lead vocals, her pure, heartfelt voice soaring over the drone of the harmonium and the steady rhythm of the mridanga drum. The result was magic. Released in August 1969, the Hare Krishna Mantra single was an astonishing, unprecedented success. It sold 70,000 copies on its first day of release and quickly climbed into the top 10 on the British music charts, eventually reaching similar heights across Europe and Asia. Suddenly, the saffron-robed devotees were celebrities. They appeared 4 times on the hugely popular television show Top of the Pops, chanting and dancing for an audience of millions. The sacred sound of the Maha Mantra, which Srila Prabhupada had brought from India in his heart, was now being broadcast from every radio and television set in the Western world. George Harrison later said, "This is going to be big." He could not have known how right he was. The dream of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had been fulfilled in a way no one could ever have imagined.
The Lords of London make their appearance. With the movement now firmly established and growing, and with financial help from George Harrison, the devotees secured their first proper temple at 7 Bowery Place in Bloomsbury, central London. Srila Prabhupada was pleased, but he instructed them that the temple was not complete without deities. He wanted them to install deities of Radha and Krishna, but the challenge was immense. How were they to find such deities in London? The search began, and for weeks it was fruitless, causing the devotees great anxiety. They established a deity hotline, hoping for a miracle. The miracle came in the form of a phone call. Someone had heard of their search and knew of a Hindu gentleman who had a set of marble Radha Krishna deities that were not being used. Mukunda Das and Tamal Krishna Goswami rushed to the man's house, and there, under a simple cloth, were the most beautiful deities they had ever seen. They were Sri Sri Radha Landanishvara. They immediately called Srila Prabhupada, who, upon hearing the news, said, "Take me there at once." That evening, Srila Prabhupada, accompanied by his disciples, went to the gentleman's home. What followed was a masterful display of transcendental strategy. Instead of immediately rushing to see the deities, Srila Prabhupada sat down and engaged the owner in casual conversation for nearly an hour, asking about his family, his business, and his life in London. He showed almost no interest in the deities, which made the owner increasingly anxious and eager to give them away. Finally, the man could wait no longer and insisted on showing the deities to the Swami. Srila Prabhupada glanced at them with a placid, non-committal expression. The man, now practically begging, said, "Swamiji, what do you think? Can you use the deities?" Prabhupada replied simply, "They look like they may be used." He then instructed his disciples to see how heavy they were. After they confirmed that they could be carried, Prabhupada stood up and said, "Okay, let's go." As the devotees picked up the deities and walked out the door, the bewildered owner followed, protesting, "Swamiji, Swamiji, 1 minute." On one account, trying to negotiate a price, and on another account, trying to raise issues about damage to the deities. Srila Prabhupada and the deities were already in the van. "Drive," Prabhupada said. A few blocks away, he told them to stop the van and unveil the deities. As he gazed upon the beautiful forms, tears streamed from his eyes, and he began to sing the sacred prayers from the Brahma Samhita. "Krishna has appeared," he said, his voice filled with love and joy. On 14th of December 1969, in a grand ceremony, Srila Prabhupada personally installed Sri Sri Radha Landanishvara as the presiding lords of the new temple. The first Radha Krishna temple in London was officially opened, a beacon of light in the heart of the Western world.
Part 3. A worldwide movement blossoms, 1970 to 1977. The Dancing White Elephants. With the Hare Krishna movement now firmly rooted in the fertile soil of the West, Srila Prabhupada orchestrated a dramatic and strategic return to his homeland in 1970. This time, he was not the solitary sadhu who had crossed the Atlantic 5 years earlier. He returned at the head of a small army of his Western disciples, a vibrant and conspicuous white and saffron cloud contingent whom he affectionately, and with a touch of strategic humour, referred to as his dancing white elephants. The term was more than just a whimsical nickname. It was a sophisticated and layered analogy that revealed Prabhupada's deep understanding of both Eastern and Western mentalities. Ramananda Das, one of the stalwart pioneers who accompanied Prabhupada, later researched and explained the term's origin. The phrase comes from Thailand, where an albino elephant is a rare and revered creature. Unlike the common working elephants that toil in logging and labour, the white elephant is considered sacred. It is not put to work. Instead, it is pampered, given special treatment, and maintained at great expense. Its true value lies in its rarity and its ability to captivate. The people find it immensely entertaining to watch a white elephant perform, to see it dance. The dance of a common black elephant would hardly warrant a second glance, but the dance of a white one is a spectacle. Prabhupada saw his Western disciples through this very lens. In the context of India, they were a complete novelty. Their enthusiastic, often wild, chanting and dancing in the streets during Sankirtan would be an irresistible curiosity for the Indian people, who had grown accustomed to their own forms of religious expression. He knew that his disciples were not versed in the intricate cultural etiquette of India. They were clumsy in their attempts to navigate daily life. Prabhupada himself had to micromanage everything, as Brahmananda recalled, teaching them the most basic things, from how to peel a banana and eat properly to the complex logistics of organising large-scale preaching programs or pandals. They were, in essence, high maintenance and expensive to keep. Yet their sincerity and devotion were their greatest assets. This was the core of Prabhupada's brilliant strategy. He declared, "I've opened the West, now I will take my dancing white elephants to India." His mission was to confront a spiritual paradox, that India, the very cradle of Krishna consciousness, had in many ways grown complacent or had forgotten the essence of its own profound heritage. He saw that the sight of these white elephants, these Westerners from supposedly materialistic societies, chanting the names of Krishna with such conviction and joy, would act as a powerful wake-up call. Their dance was designed to attract the Indian populace to come and see what was happening, to hear the holy names, and to re-engage with their own spiritual culture. It was a reverse colonization of the spirit, a masterful stroke of preaching genius that shocked, intrigued, and ultimately inspired a nation to look again at the timeless treasure that it possessed.
The Brihad Madranga, a revolution in print. As the 1970s dawned, the Hare Krishna movement entered a period of explosive global expansion. Temples were opening on every continent, and the sound of the holy name was being heard from Tokyo to Toronto. To support and sustain this growth, Srila Prabhupada established the most important pillar of his mission, the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, BBT. Founded formally in 1972, the BBT was designated as a legal entity separate from the administrative structure of ISKCON, a movement that underscored the supreme and protected position of his teachings. His spiritual master had told him, "If you ever get money, print books," and Srila Prabhupada took this instruction as his very life. He often referred to his books as the Brihad Mridanga, the great drum. While the small mridanga drum in a kirtan party could be heard from a block or two, the great drum of his books would be heard all over the world and for generations to come. Without books, he stated unequivocally, our preaching has no solid basis. He made it clear to his disciples that this was their most vital work. Actually, producing and distributing books is our most important engagement, he wrote in a letter. All other engagements culminate in this one end, distribution of books. He considered book distribution to be the best kirtan, even better than chanting, because its effect was wider. A crucial element of this literary revolution was the BBT art department. From the very beginning in 1966, Srila Prabhupada engaged his artist disciples, instructing them to create windows into the spiritual world. He made Jadharani Dasi the first art director in 1967, personally guiding her and others on how to depict the spiritual world, not from imagination, but from the descriptions in the scriptures. These paintings, which filled the pages of his books, were a powerful preaching tool, attracting people to the transcendental forms of Krishna and his pastimes. Inspired by this mandate, his disciples launched the Great Sankirtan movement of the 1970s. Thousands of young men and women, filled with spiritual zeal, went out daily onto the streets, into shopping centres, and through airports. their sole purpose to place one of Srila Prabhupada's books into the hands of a conditioned soul. The stories from this era are legendary, filled with accounts of incredible sacrifice, determination, and divine intervention. Devotees would brave freezing winters and scorching summers, facing ridicule and rejection, sustained only by their faith in their spiritual master's words. The results were staggering. In 1975, over 9 million books and magazines were distributed in England alone. By 1976, that number had grown, with over 9 million total pieces of literature sold, including over 1 million hardbound books. This transcendental plot, as Prabhupada called it, not only spread the philosophy on an unprecedented scale, but also generated the financial resources needed to build temples, print more books, and expand the mission to every corner of the globe. Returning to the source. Temples in the Holy Dham, even as his movement flourished in the West, Srila Prabhupada's heart was in India. He was determined to establish 3 major centers in the holy lands of Vrindavan, Mayapur, and Bombay, not only as places of pilgrimage for his Western disciples, but as beacons to reawaken the dormant spiritual consciousness of India itself. In Mayapur, the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he sought to fulfill the long-cherished desire of his own spiritual master. After securing land in 1971, he laid the cornerstone for the world headquarters of his movement in 1972. He named it the Sri Mayapur Chandrodaya Mandir, the rising moon of Mayapur, and prophesied that a great temple would be built there, a spiritual city that would draw people from all over the world to receive the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. In Vrindavan, the sacred land of Lord Krishna's childhood pastimes, he envisioned a magnificent temple. On the auspicious day of Ram Navami in 1975, this vision was realized with the grand opening of the Sri Sri Krishna Balaram Mandir. He personally oversaw every detail of its design and construction, establishing the worship of the divine brothers Krishna and Balaram. Along with Sri Sri Radha Shamsundar and Sri Sri Gauranitai, Lord Balaram is the source of spiritual strength, he declared. I built this temple to empower the devotees. But it was the project in Bombay that Srila Prabhupada called his heart, and it was by far his greatest struggle. The story of the Juhu temple is an epic of faith and perseverance. It was a 13-year saga that began with a vision in 1965 and involved a protracted and bitter battle against a duplicitous landlord, Mr. Nair, corrupt municipal officers, and constant harassment. The struggle reached its nadir in 1973 when municipal workers, accompanied by police, arrived with sledgehammers and demolished the temporary temple structure, leaving the deities of Sri Sri Radha Rasavihari standing on their altar amidst the rubble. Many thought the project was finished, but Srila Prabhupada was unwavering. He had made a promise to the deities that he would build them a beautiful temple, and he saw the fight not as a mundane legal dispute, but as Krishna's own battle. His determination galvanized his disciples and attracted the support of many influential citizens. After years of struggle, he was victorious. When the land was finally secured, he leaned back and said with satisfaction, "It was a good fight. Someone should write a book about it." The magnificent temple was finally opened in 1978, a testament to the power of a pure devotee's resolve.
The battle for legitimacy. The explosive growth of the Hare Krishna movement in the 1970s did not go unnoticed or unopposed. As its public presence became more prominent, the movement faced a rising tide of opposition from secular anti-cult groups and Christian counter-cultists who branded it as a dangerous and illegitimate religion. This opposition often manifested in the legal arena, where the movement had to fight for its very right to exist and practice its most fundamental religious activities. Many of the most significant legal battles of the era centered on the First Amendment right to perform the Sankirtan, the public chanting of the holy names and distribution of spiritual literature. Landmark cases such as Heffron v. International Society for Krishna Consciousness, which went all the way to the US Supreme Court, dealt with the rights of devotees to solicit donations and distribute books in public places like state fairs and airports. In a key victory in 1977, a New York State Supreme Court justice, in dismissing charges of illegal imprisonment, declared the Hare Krishna movement a bona fide religion with roots in India that go back thousands of years, affirming the members' inalienable right to practice their faith. These court cases were more than just legal disputes. They were a fight to establish Krishna consciousness as a bona fide religion in the eyes of the law and to protect the sacred mission of spreading the holy name, which is the very essence of the movement.
Simple living, high thinking, the farm communities. Central pillar of Srila Prabhupada's vision for a spiritual society was the establishment of self-sufficient rural communities. This was not an afterthought. It was one of the original servant purposes of ISKCON, to bring members closer together for the purpose of teaching a simpler, more natural way of life. He saw modern industrial civilization as soul-killing and advocated a return to the land, to a life centered on cow protection and dependence on Krishna's natural bounty. His formula was simple and profound. If one man has a cow and 4 acres of land, he said he has no economic problems. The motto for these communities was simple living, high thinking. By minimizing bodily necessities and producing their own food and cloth, devotees could free up their time and energy for the real business of human life, developing Krishna consciousness. He predicted that as modern society inevitably began to collapse under the weight of its own materialism, millions of people would seek refuge in these spiritual oases. The first of these communities, New Vrindavan, was found in the hills of West Virginia in 1968. Life there was initially austere, with no electricity or running water in the early days, but the devotees' enthusiasm was high. They built temples, established a cow protection program, cultivated the land, and started a school, truly embodying the principles of simple living. The community, despite undergoing tumultuous challenges through the years which shook the foundations of the movement, grew into a thriving spiritual village and a major place of pilgrimage. Srila Prabhupada took deep personal interest in the development of New Govardhan in Australia, seeing it as a vital part of his worldwide mission. He stressed that this was the next aspect of Krishna consciousness he wished to push forward. In letters to the Australian devotees, he wrote, "If these farms become successful, then the whole world will be enveloped by Krishna consciousness." He painted a vivid picture of this ideal. "I am very happy to see fresh vegetables, fresh fruits, grains, and the devotees taking sumptuous prasadam and chanting Hare Krishna. This is the actual meaning of human life." He instructed them to get everything locally, to build their own houses from the timber on the land, and to become truly self-sufficient. He even expressed his deep desire to visit personally, stating, "I wish to make a farm tour, and then I shall surely visit your farm." Although his failing health prevented this visit, his words provided immense encouragement. Kurma Das suggested to Srila Prabhupada that he was the farm acharya, but Srila Prabhupada said Krishna is the farm acharya. Baladev is holding a plough and Krishna is holding the calf. Krishna advised Nanda Maharaj not to perform Indra Puja, but to worship the land, Govardhan, because it was supplying all foodstuffs for the residents of Vrindavan and the cows as well. By ensuring that the community does everything to protect the cows in the land. The devotees were performing the highest worship at New Govardhan. Jai.
A world traveler for Krishna. Srila Prabhupada's presence was the dynamo that powered the entire global machine of his movement, and from 1970 onwards, he became a traveler unlike any in the world had ever seen. Between 1970 and 1977, he circled the globe 14 times, bringing the teachings of bhakti to thousands on 6 continents. At an age when most men are seeking the quiet comforts of retirement, Srila Prabhupada embarked on a relentless schedule that would have exhausted men a third of his age. Every flight, every car ride, every step he took was a calculated move to establish Krishna consciousness on every continent. To be with him during these years was to witness a whirlwind of devotional activity. One moment he would be in Melbourne, Australia, lecturing to a packed university hall. The next he would be in Nairobi, Kenya, meeting with local Indian leaders and inspiring the first African devotees. His schedule was a blur of continents and cultures, but his message remained unchanged, his focus absolute. In January 1975 alone, he embarked on a tour that took him to 12 major cities in 50 days, covering over 50,000 kilometers and visiting 7 countries. His itinerary from July 1976 onwards included travels on the Radha Damodar traveling Sankirtan party buses in America, attending the Grand Rath Yatra with a massive crowd down Fifth Avenue in New York, stopping the city in its tracks, visiting Bhaktivedanta Manor in the UK, installing deities in Hyderabad, India, and attending the austere Kumbh Mela festival in Allahabad, all while his health was failing. This relentless traveling, despite his advanced age and declining health, demonstrated his unwavering commitment to fulfilling his spiritual master's order to spread Krishna consciousness to every corner of the world. This relentless traveling, undertaken while his body was succumbing to illness, is perhaps the most powerful testament to his character. He was driven by an immense love, a love for his spiritual master, whose order to preach in the English language was his very life and soul, and a profound, compassionate love for all the suffering souls of this world. Each mile he traveled, each lecture he gave was an act of mercy, a personal invitation extended to everyone he met to come back home, back to Godhead.
Part 4, The Legacy of Mercy, 1977 to present. The final lesson, Vani over Vapu. In May of 1977, his health failing, Srila Prabhupada made a conscious decision. He chose to leave the world from the holiest of places, the sacred land of Vrindavan, the abode of his beloved Lord Krishna. His final months were not a period of decline, but a final profound lesson for his disciples and for the world. He taught them how a pure devotee, a soul completely surrendered to the will of the Lord, faces the ultimate test of death, not with fear or lamentation, but with perfect composure, unwavering consciousness, and an ever-deepening love for Krishna. During these final days, he gave his most crucial instructions and principles upon which his legacy would stand for all time. He repeatedly stressed that his physical departure was not a separation. His true self, his eternal presence, would remain manifest in his teachings. There is nothing new to be said, he told his grieving disciples. Whatever I had to say, I've already said in my books. Now you must all try to understand it and continue with your endeavors. Whether I am present or not present doesn't matter. He established the timeless principle of Vani over Vapu, the eternal vibration of his instruction over the temporary presence of his physical body. This was the key to his eternal association. If you feel very strongly about my absence, he wrote in a letter years earlier, you may place my picture on my sitting places, and this will be the source of an inspiration for you. Physical presence is immaterial. Presence of the transcendental sound received from the spiritual master should be the guidance of life. This was the ultimate act of mercy. By pointing to his books as the complete and final repository of his guidance, he created an unchangeable, timeless source of authority for his movement. He ensured that his association would not be limited to the few who had met him physically, but would be available to every sincere soul for the next 10,000 years. He defined a true leader not as one who is appointed or who possesses personal charisma, but as a first-class disciple who perfectly follows the instructions of the spiritual master. He thus established a legacy built not on a personality, but on the purity of the teaching itself. Srila Prabhupada assured his grief-stricken followers that he would never leave them. I will live forever from my books, he promised. So as long as they cherished his teachings, cooperated with one another, and dedicated their lives to spreading the Sankirtan movement, his presence would remain as their guiding force. On the evening of 14th of November 1977, in his room at the Krishna Balaram Mandir, surrounded by his loving disciples softly chanting the holy names, Srila Prabhupada gave his final instruction by departing this mortal world. Srila Prabhupada departed from this world, leaving behind a global family and a legacy of unending mercy. Jai.
A test of faith and the power of cooperation. Srila Prabhupada's departure left an immense spiritual vacuum. The radiant sun of the movement had set, and his disciples were now faced with the monumental task of navigating the future without his physical guidance. The years that followed were a test of their faith and maturity. As Prabhupada himself had foreseen, challenges arose. The movements faced internal struggles over leadership and direction, as well as intensified external attacks from an increasingly hostile anti-cult movement that sought to discredit and dismantle the society he had built. It was during these trials that the true potency of his final instructions had become manifest. Srila Prabhupada had anticipated these difficulties and had provided the antidote, selfless cooperation. He had told his leading disciples, "Your love for me will be shown by how you cooperate to keep this movement together." It was this principle, this loving desire to please their spiritual master by working together in his service, that allowed the movement to weather the storms. His sincere flock of devotees, though young and sometimes struggling, clung to his teachings as their very life raft, pushing through struggles, disagreements, and cries by depending on Srila Prabhupada's Vani, the vast library of instructions contained in his books, letters, and recorded lectures. His disciples and followers found the strength, wisdom, and unity to carry the mission forward, proving that the society he built was not dependent on his physical presence, but on the eternal spiritual principles he had so powerfully instilled.
In every town and village, Srila Prabhupada's departure was not an end. It was the beginning of a new chapter in the history of his mission. His disciples, taking his final instructions as their life and soul, carried his message forward with renewed determination. They were empowered to fulfill the sacred prediction of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, uttered 500 years earlier. Prithvite ache yatta nagaradi grama, sarvatra prachara haiba mora nama. In every town and village on the surface of the earth, my holy name will be preached. The decades that followed saw this prophecy manifest in ways that would have been unimaginable to the solitary monk who arrived in America in 1965. The amazing successes of the movement were a testament to the spiritual potency Prabhupada had invested in it. The Iron Curtain, a symbol of brute materialist ideology, crumbled. The Hare Krishna movement, which had been brutally suppressed by the KGB, with devotees imprisoned and tortured for their faith, suddenly spread like wildfire throughout Eastern Europe and the former Soviet Union. Prabhupada's books, translated into dozens of new languages, became underground bestsellers, satisfying a spiritual hunger that decades of enforced atheism could not extinguish. The Food for Life program, born from a single moment of Srila Prabhupada's overwhelming compassion upon seeing hungry village children in Mayapur in 1974, grew to become the world's largest vegetarian food relief organization. Fulfilling his mandate that no one within 10 miles of a temple should go hungry, devotees have distributed billions of free, sanctified meals to the needy, to victims of natural disasters, and in war-torn regions across the globe, from Sarajevo to Sri Lanka, from New Orleans to Ukraine. And the books, the very heart of his legacy, continued the revolutionary march across the planet. The translations he had so painstakingly dictated in the lonely pre-dawn hours at the Radha Damodar temple were now being printed and distributed by the millions in over 80 languages. Airports, city streets, and doorsteps became the front lines for the Sankirtan revolution. As a new generation of devotees dedicated themselves to the work of Prabhupada, Prabhupada had called his heart and soul, changing hearts and lives on every continent. Srila Prabhupada ki. Oh, Jai. Take that back. Here we go. I can't take it. Yeah, double Jai. All right. 60 years ago, a lone, elderly, holy man stood on the deck of a cargo ship, facing the vast, unknown expanse of the Atlantic. In his prayers, he revealed his heart, feeling himself an unfortunate, unqualified, and most fallen soul, a mere puppet in the hands of his Lord. He had only an unshakable faith in the holy name and the order of his spiritual master. That single man, empowered by that faith, accomplished a miracle. The journey from the Jaladuta to the world is the story of that miracle. It is the story of how one man's pure devotion planted a seed that has grown into a mighty, wish-fulfilling tree, its branches spreading to every town and village, offering shelter and the sweet fruit of love of God to all. The endless mercy of his divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, lives forever in his instructions and in the hearts of those who follow him. His mission continues today in the heart of every soul who picks up his books, honors prasadam, and finds the courage to chant the holy names that he so freely gave. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribol.
Okay, Hare Krishna, dear devotees. The intention behind these evenings was to deepen our love and appreciation for Srila Prabhupada, and to do so in an intimate, family-like setting. I think we can all agree that this mood has been achieved, and that's because of all of you. Thank you for coming, thank you for listening so attentively, and for opening your hearts. This is our community, and I'm so grateful and proud to be part of it. Over the past 4 nights, we've travelled together from Srila Prabhupada's early preparation in India, across the ocean in the Jaladuta, and to the first year in New York City, and then across the world as his movement grew. I think we can all say that what we've heard has touched our hearts in many different ways, deepening our love for Srila Prabhupada and our appreciation for everything he has given us. His courage, his determination, his faith, and his compassion are not just stories. They are instructions and inspiration for our lives right now. One of the beautiful things about these readings is that they make this year's Vyasa Puja even more special, because together we've gone deeper into Prabhupada's life. On Sunday, when you come into the temple, I encourage you to take a moment to look closely at the decorations around the Vyasasan, and there you'll find little gems that connect directly to the stories and the moment that we've shared over the past nights. As an example, here is the globe of the world. At the moment, you can see all these sparkles at all of Prabhupada's temples over the world, of which is a lot. I'd really like to say a big heartfelt thank you to everyone who has helped in putting these nights together. In particular, to Sri Kanta for preparing the readings, to Bhavi, Kalindi, Sudevi, Vana and Ghana for the delicious cookies, to the cows for the hot milk, to everyone who has helped with the setup and pack up, especially Virginia for setting up the temple room so beautifully every night. And to all of you who have come and listened with such open hearts, your service has made these evenings truly special. Okay, the last thing. Oh, you can see why Krishna has 4 hands, will be very handy. So the booklets. These booklets are yours to keep. Okay. If you have missed out on some nights, all 4 books are on the table there. So these books are yours to keep. They hold the reflections and nervous. I shouldn't have looked up. They hold your reflections and realizations, and the prompts at the back can serve as a base for your prayers and meditations, asking Srila Prabhupada to give us the strength and determination in our service. I hope you'll revisit them throughout the year to keep Prabhupada in the center of your life and to nurture that ongoing gratitude for all he has given us. We won't break up into you can do your one meditations at home tonight as we run over time. Then, as we leave tonight, let's carry this gratitude forward. Let's honor Srila Prabhupada, not just in words, but by continuing his mission in whatever ways we can, through our chanting, our service, our kindness, and our sharing of Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada has given us the greatest gifts. Let's cherish those gifts and do our best to pass them on to others. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Trudy. I'm just wondering if it's possible, moving forward, that we could maybe have 1 or 2 nights a week of Krishna book reading with all of us together and cookies. Anyone would like that? Hands up.
Hari Bol Prabhu's just mentioning from the Krishna Farm shop. We've got this on a special. This is being quoted a lot. Excerpts from this book. Prabhupada, Messenger of the Supreme Lord, doing it as a special to celebrate this moment, $5 each. Just letting you know. Hari Bol!